Sugar Free also? Do you know Sugar Free also put out new singles? Like
How
in
do you
April?
know about Sugar Free?
I didn't get it.
How can you not? He's the only rapper that ever got out of Pomona. So anyway,
I can't believe you, Rocliffe. Oh my god.
I'm older than you think. Anyway, so the point I was trying to make, yeah, he's got 2 new singles.
Hey, I love Sugar Free. That's my boy.
Neither of which I can mention on the recording. So the point I was trying to make was that
Oh my god.
we have. How can I know about Sugar Free? Me and Sugar Free went to different schools together. Okay, drawing's gonna look like this. You know, here's the thing. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
That's right. That's right.
In a real way. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm never gonna forget that.
Yeah. Teacher of the year, buddy. Teacher of the year. In fact, he was playing at the Canyon on Central Montclair Plaza. I was like, man, that'd be awesome. Okay, so anyways, him and DJ Quick, wasn't it? I don't know. Anyways, yeah, you've never heard of DJ Quick in your life, and if you did, you wouldn't like it.
I know DJ. I've heard DJ Quick.
You've never heard of DJ Quick in your life.
I'm a lot older than I look.
Well, some believe in breaks and some believe in dollars. So anyways, my point was that this thing right here is a caliper, and you know it's a caliper because it's shaped like a C. This is a discussion about disc brakes, the most common type of brakes found on modern motor vehicles. So we got a caliper, and then we're going to have, I'm going to use a red pen. Folks, you should have some colored pens and pencils for this. That would be prudent and wise. What happened to Rudy? Rudy used to be a reliable student.
Here too.
Well, you know, this thing right here is a brake pad. 2002. P 2002. Yay, Chuck's here. You know, I drove by the Rancho Cucamonga Sears, and I wanted to go in so bad, but we were actually going to Claim Jumper for a cake. What in the world is that? We were going to Claim Jumper for cake because they have like that six thing stacked high thing. Yeah.
Good.
So I was freaking rocking. It wasn't Michelle Norman good, but it was good. All right, so that thing right there is a rotor. Oh shoot, gotta keep these in line. All right, so we're gonna go like this. Kid said to me today, oh, your drawings are too complicated, we can't keep up. I'm like, well, it doesn't have to be as good as mine because my drawings pretty much suck anyway, but you just have to make sure that you get the general idea. There's a rotor going that way. Doggone it, my right drawings suck is what's really going on. Anyway, I'll show you a picture. It's going to be much nicer. Okay, so disregard this line. Yeah, so this thing right here is the rotor, and it's called the rotor because it rotates. Sometimes it's called the disc. Yeah. Oh, so Gabe, did you see your good friend Gavin Newsom has decided every new car in the state of California is going to be 100% electrical?
Yeah, I seen that.
So we're going to be doing a lot of wiring. There's not going to be anything coming down the wires, but the wiring will be there in case some miracle occurs. Yeah, we don't have enough electricity to run respirators here, but by God, we'll all be driving electric cars. Yeah.
I don't like him very much.
When I read that, I was like, wow, didn't Rocliffe say don't ever buy an electrical car?
Yeah. Well,
Now we're being forced to,
yeah,
or we're going to.
well, so you get for
I think they know what's best for everybody.
electing totalitarians. Collectivism, that's how it goes. Right? So you have not any idea how many people I know that escaped communist countries and then they come here and they're like, what the hell?
I just left.
I just left. Yeah. Seriously. Okay, so anyways, you can tell it's a caliper because it's shaped like a C.
Mhm.
And inside the caliper, it's got brake pad, sandwich is the bread, the sandwich, and then the rotor is the meat of the sandwich. Now there's a piston inside the caliper that's going to squeeze the brake pads against the rotor. We didn't talk about this?
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, because I did make this drawing down here. I noticed that. I did make that drawing there, right? This is a front view. See, you got the caliper shaped like a C. The rotor is rotating, that's the red part. And then there's brake pads on either side. There's a piston in here that's going to come out when you step on the master brake cylinder, on this brake pedal, and it's going to squeeze the two brake pads against the rotor. I don't know how we didn't get past that. I told you not to get an Audi. Anyways, let me look. 2002. All right, Chuck, P2002.
Yes.
Since you already know this stuff, what do you think about a P2002 for a 2012 Audi Q7? Can you look into that? Yeah, please.
Write down. What do I need to get again?
P2002.
Again?
P2002
Okay.
for a
That's the error code?
2012. I'm sorry?
That's the error code?
Yeah, for a 2012 Audi Q7. Because I figure, you know, I mean, I'm not going to be teaching you anything about brake basics, right? Let me see what you got. Okay, first of all, folks, a P code means it's a powertrain code, right? So it's going to be engine, transmission, something like that. PCM, yeah?
Yep.
2002. Well, we'll have to see what Chuck comes up with. So, thanks, Chuck. So,
Yes.
inside the caliper, there's a piston. And when we step on the brake pedal, that's going to push brake fluid down the brake lines towards the caliper. And that's going to push the piston inside the caliper to squeeze the brake pads against the rotor. We didn't talk about this. I talked about the master cylinder before I talked about the caliper. Really? Golly, I must have been perdido in your ojos. Okay, what's the line at the top of the drawing? There you go. That's a brake line. Yeah. 10-1. That's today. Payday. Yes, please. And like I say, we may only have 4 more class sessions before we get back in the classroom. So that, you know, get out in the shop. So
Right.
just prepare yourself for that eventuality, right? Get some coveralls, get some disposable clothing. Yeah. Start thinking about what you want to look at, what you want to do, stuff like that. Your priorities.
Yep.
All right. So,
Got it.
and I think we're going to have to do this, go to some videos. And yeah, so we have 15 hours of new classroom content at my website, YouTube, David Rowcliffe, my channel. I'm going to be a big influencer now, quack. So let me go over here because it's got to be over here. There we go. So let's do this and see what happens.
Welcome to Auto Tech Labs. Today we will see the second part of how an automotive disc brake system works.
I want to see the first part.
In the last part, we saw the working principle of the wheel side.
No, I think that's the wrong one. So let me check. Go back here. Is it right here? Golly, I'm way back. Yeah, we're going way back. So let's go how disc brake works. Control C, Control V. Okay, there we go. Part 1. There we go.
Disc brake system works.
There we go.
Let's see the principle behind the disc brake system.
Ah.
The brake system works based on the Pascal's law. The law states that
Pressure exerted anywhere in a contained incompressible fluid is distributed equally in all directions throughout the fluid. All right, so let's unpack that. Contain means it's got to be a closed container with no place to escape. Incompressible fluid means a liquid, basically. Now, they are compressible, but they won't lose much in the way of volume, right? Unlike like steam, which you can compress a lot, or air, which you can compress a lot, and it will lose volume. It's like basically like a loaf of bread. You can smash it down into a very small volume. You can't do that with a liquid because the atoms and the molecules are already right next to each other anyway. Okay, so the point of Pascal's law is to say that pressure in a confined container is equal everywhere and in all directions. That's all. And this is the reason that it works for brake systems or hydraulic clutches, because any pressure you put anywhere on the inside of the system is going to be the same everywhere. So let's look. Really?
pressure exerted anywhere in a contained incompressible fluid is distributed equally in all directions throughout the fluid. Let's make it simple.
Okay, Chuck, I'm seeing that this code also comes out at the same time, P2463. Sorry about that, P2463. That's a weird code. I've never seen that one before. That's a manufacturer-specific code, though. The other one might be too. Actually, if it's a 2000, it's probably manufacturer-specific. Told you not to get a European import. Anyways, we'll do what we can, yeah? All right, so here's what we've got. We got a piston here. Actually, this is a syringe, right? It's got a plunger, it's got a piston, and it's got a tube, and it's got some liquid in it, right? So when we push this plunger down, this piston is going to push this liquid over here. We talked about hydraulics in this class. I know that.
Yeah.
Here's another piston. Well, this is pretty much the same size as the master cylinder piston. This is pretty much the same size as the caliper piston. As a result, when you push this down, this piston is going to come out like this, and the piston is going to come out of the caliper and squeeze the brake pads against the rotor. Ready?
Consider two cylinders with pistons connected each other and filled with incompressible fluid. The mathematical relation is as follows.
Don't worry about mathematical relations. Let's get to here.
Fluid will transmit the force
See
to the
that?
right piston surface,
See
but
that?
it will be a factor of the ratio of two piston surfaces.
All they're saying is that if you have a 1-inch piston here, that you move a 1 inch, and you have a 4-inch piston here, it's only going to move a 1/4 inch. That's what we already talked about.
This concludes that with a small force F1 at left piston will give a higher force F2 at right piston.
And what he's saying there is if you create 100 psi worth of force here, since this piston's 4 times as big, it'll have 400 pounds of force. So if you create 1,000 pounds of force here, you'll end up with 4,000 pounds here, which is good. That's what's going to make the caliper apply with great
Provided if A2
confidence.
is greater than A1. With this, the left piston can act at the pedal side and the right piston can act at the wheel side, transferring energy from pedal to the brakes. Now we know the theory. Let's see how this works in real. Let's see the exploded view of the car wheel and the parts involved. The wheel hub assembly, the disc brake rotor, the brake caliper assembly, the wheel, and the lug nuts. The wheel hub assembly holds the wheel and the disc rotor, and the bearing inside it allows their smooth rotation.
Remember, every bearing is there so that something can rotate on a shaft or a shaft can rotate inside something else. These are the wheel studs. That's where you're going to put the lug nuts.
The disc rotor is the part to which the brake pads squeeze against.
Now, you've got these little ventilation fins here. And you'll notice that they line up with these drilled holes. That's to get airflow through the rotor so that it won't overheat, because that gets super, super hot, because after all, we got all this friction trying to slow down this very heavy car.
This will create
I'll try.
friction that retards the rotation of the wheel. The disc rotor produces a lot of heat due to this friction, and the drilled holes provides ventilation to remove this heat. The brake caliper assembly uses...
Okay, that's the caliper assembly bottom view. So the caliper has a piston housing here. This is a single piston caliper. It's got inner brake pad here, outer brake pad here, and the brake pad consists of two parts. It's got a steel backing plate, steel because it's strong, and then it's got the friction material here, and we talked about friction materials before. So the rotor is sandwiched between these two pads, and there's a piston inside the caliper that you're going to see in a moment that's going to squeeze these two against the rotor.
Is the hydraulic force from...
I didn't show you this video before, or did I?
I think so.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
I told you.
the brake pedal to squeeze the brake pads to the rotor surfaces, thus creating friction and decelerates the wheel.
Okay, now, since we already shown you this video, I'm going to point out the important parts you need to understand about doing service. Since this is a vocationally oriented class, I'm going to show you about service. This thing right here is where it connects to the brake line. That's called a banjo fitting. It's got a bolt in it that is hollow. Now, what do you think happens to the strength of a bolt when you make it hollow? It goes way down. Yeah, which means if you over tighten that rascal, you're going to tear it in half. And if it's 830 and you tear that in half, it's going to be a very bad day for you. And if it's 10 to 9, it's going to be even worse. So don't do that. First of all, get in there early so we're not doing this kind of work at 10 to 9, right? What you want to do is you want to plan to be done by 8:30, right? You want to plan to be done by 8:15, right? So you can sit around and say, ha, 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 I have no worries and no problems because I got finished 45 minutes early. What you don't want to do is say, you know what, I'm going to get done exactly at 8:59 and everything's going to go my way and everything's going to go perfect and I'm going to have no problems. So I can start at 8:30. And not only that, I can stand around and talk for 20 minutes because after all, everything's going to go my way. Everything's going to go perfect. There's not going to be any strip nuts. No, don't do that. Don't do that because you will make someone very angry at you for your pride and haughtiness. And there's a consequence for that, right? So what I'm going to do, yeah, every time I start a job, I'm filled with fear and trembling. It's like, please don't make this a freaking 16-hour job. And as a result, you know, and I'm going fast, but I'm not in a hurry. And, you know, I'm always assuming that it's going to take twice as long as it should. And I'm almost always wrong. But sometimes I'm not. So I'm always going to plan to take, it's going to take twice as long as it should. As a result, I'm not going to be stressed and I'm not going to try to do too much. And I'm usually going to be done early and I'm going to be so grateful. I'm going to be so happy because, you know, I'm going to have all my stuff cleaned up. I'm going to have time to put all the tools away. I'm going to have time to help somebody else, whatever. But what you don't want to do is assume that everything's going to go your way. It's just like walking down the street, assuming that, you know, everybody's your friend. Well, everybody on my internet connection's unstable. Really? Okay, so everybody on the cell block is not your friend, and every part on the car isn't your friend either. So the point I was trying to make was,
where do you get all this information from?
from a gravely disordered mind. So the point was, here's the piston inside the caliper, right? And when brake fluid comes down here, it's going to push the piston and squeeze those two together. All right, so what we got to do is we got to make sure everything is sufficiently lubricated, cleaned and lubricated, because this stuff never gets done, and as a result, it causes problems. This being not clean or lubricated is what causes the uneven wear that I showed you last time. So we want to make sure these pins are appropriately cleaned and lubricated. Hey, you going to use grease on these? No, why? Because they're going to get really hot, and then this grease is going to drip down on your rotor. It's going to corrupt your pads and give you big old hard spots on your rotors. No, 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 no. Now there is a special grease to use on that, but you know, you could use anti-seize too. So my point was, though, that we need to make sure the stuff is clean, and we need to make sure that it is lubricated correctly, because this is a floating caliper, which means it's going to be moving back and forth on these pins.
The caliper assembly consists of the caliper bracket, slider pins, dust boots, inner brake pad, outer brake.
Now that you mention it, those are called dust boots. Every boot does the same thing. It keeps what's inside in and keeps what's outside out. What's inside is these beautiful, precisely machined pins. What's outside is brake dust, brake filings, cast iron filings, all kinds of dirt, water, all kinds of stuff that we need to keep away from this so it doesn't get jacked up. So now the caliper gets stuck and you start getting uneven brake wear and unsafe brake operation.
Brake pad, caliper frame, and inside it, the piston.
Piston's got a boot too.
The caliper frame is having a banjo fitting.
This bolt right here is hollow. It's got a big old drilled hole going through it that comes out here. Do not over tighten that, folks. Tighten it, but don't over tighten it. Incidentally, while we're on the topic of these copper washers, when they give you a new caliper, they're going to give you new copper washers. I've never had one work that it didn't leak. So I always use the old ones. For some reason, they got superior metallurgy. Why do they use copper? Let me ask you a question. Why would they use copper? Because is copper soft or hard?
Oh.
It's soft. As a result, when you compress it, it compresses easily and it deforms easily, which means it won't leak. If you use hard stuff, it won't deform and stuff will leak past it. The copper washers they use on the new ones are all way too hard in my experience, and I don't feel like tightening the hell out of this thing until these stop leaking. No, I don't. No, I don't. I don't feel that righteous.
Through which the fluid will reach till the piston. The pressurized fluid from the pedal's side is capable of pushing the piston with great force.
Now, not every caliper is going to have a banjo fitting, just so you know.
Also, the caliper frame is free to slide along the slider pins within the fixed extent.
If it's clean and lubricated correctly.
Now we know the parts.
Everyone's in a big hurry to get done with their working on their car because they're terrified. I mean, it's a scary thing to do until you're good at it. So as a result, they tend to take a bunch of shortcuts. Most of the shops around here will just push the piston back, throw pads in, down the road.
Let's see how it works.
There you go.
When you apply the brake, the caliper will receive the high-pressure hydraulic fluid from the brake master cylinder. The fluid will push the piston, which makes the inner brake pad to squeeze against the disc rotor surface. As a result, the fluid's backward force will push the caliper frame along the slide pin, which makes the outer brake pad to squeeze against the other side of the disc rotor. Let's see one more time from the top view.
That's
The
actually
fluid
front
pushes
view.
the piston, and the piston pushes the inner brake pad. Once the inner brake pad is pushed against the rotor, the fluid will push the caliper frame. The outer brake pad will now be pulled towards the other side of the disc rotor. This is how the disc brake system works on wheel side.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Did I show you the videos of how the master brake system, the master brake cylinder works?
I don't recall seeing that.
Okay, I apologize because I teach this content like 5 different classes, so sometimes I get lost in
5 different brainwaves.
yeah, a lot of different.
Welcome.
movies. So one of my students today goes, "Yeah, my dad's in Pelican Bay." I was like, or was in Pelican Bay. I'm like, remind me to pass you, son. That was a joke. Yeah, what's that? Trying to get me to pass you? That was a joke. Pretty weird joke. But anyways, ones for
In
weird
the
jokes I
last
wouldn't have done.
part, we saw the working principle at the wheel side. In this part, we will see how it works at the pedal side. The master cylinder is the main part here. It transfers the force on the pedal to the calipers.
Have you seen this?
I don't think so.
There is a push rod, outlet port, and a fluid reservoir tank. Let's see what's inside the master cylinder.
Can I ask you a question? What's printed on this, on the top of this orange cap?
The amount of fluid that's
Not
supposed
the
to be in
amount, not the amount, the type.
it? Oh, okay.
On the side of the reservoir, it's going to say MAX, which is max. Huh. Chuck may not have heard the last edition. Hey, Chuck, did you hear that Audi Q7 also has a P2463 code? Were you here when I said that? More manufacturer-specific codes. Let's go.
There are inlet ports.
All right, let me show you. This right here is a reservoir. That's where we keep the brake fluid. I know I taught you that because I have the picture right here. Yes, I did. Now, right here we got a piston. Right here we got a piston. These are return springs. And what happens is this little piston, that's a seal. Remember, every seal is there so that the piston, so that nothing gets past the piston. As soon as this piston passes this little port right here, that's all of a sudden a confined space. So as the piston pushes against it, it's going to create PSI, pounds per square inch. It's going to create fluid pressure. And that fluid pressure is going to push down the brake lines because the outlet port's right here. It's going to push down the brake lines. Going to go to the ABS unit first in a modern car, but then it's eventually going to end up in the calipers. Same thing here. This is a tandem brake system. Every car sold after 1969 in the state, well, actually in the whole United States, is required to have a tandem system. Like if you look at a 66 Malibu, it's only got a single master cylinder. It's only got one piston. As a result, if you had a bad brake line, none of your brakes would work. None of your hydraulic brakes would work. Your emergency brake would, but your hydraulics wouldn't. That's why this system has dual master cylinders. That means it's got two hydraulic systems. Now, I got to tell you, if one system goes bad, if one blows out a seal or tears a brake line, you're going to only have, I mean, one of your brake systems isn't going to work. Hopefully that's the back system, because remember, the front system does 75% of the braking. You lose this system, your brakes are going to suck. You're only going to have 25% braking, which means you better hope for good luck. Now, on a modern car, though, before that, it's going to sense the difference in pressures between these two systems, and it's going to throw a red light on your dash saying brake. If you see a red light on your dash that says brake, and it suddenly appears, that means your brakes probably don't work too good. You better get off the freeway and slow down, stop as soon as you can. Now, you might just have a red brake light because you've got your parking brake on still. But if it all of a sudden comes on, that's a bad problem. There's also in many cars a sensor right here that's a fluid level sensor, and a lot of times if your fluid level gets low, it will cause a brake light as well. Remember, amber lights means you got a problem. Red lights means you got a real big problem that you need to do something about quick. All right.
For the fluid to reach the cylinder, compensating ports, primary piston, secondary piston, retaining springs, and piston seals. Now, let's see how the master cylinder works. When you press the brake, the push rod pushes the primary piston, closing the first compensating port. This creates pressure in the cylinder, which pushes the secondary piston, and furtherly closing the second compensating port. Hence, both pistons will push the fluid to their corresponding calipers. In case if the secondary piston fails to build up pressure, the primary piston can still develop pressure with increased travel.
But you ain't gonna like it.
And if the primary piston fails, the secondary piston will not receive any pressure to move. So the push rod at the end of the first piston can push secondary piston, which requires much force to be applied on the brake pedal.
Much.
Even for a fully functional master cylinder, pushing the pistons through the brake pedal requires much force. So later on, another component named boosters were introduced. The brake.
3 things that made it common for women to drive cars: automatic transmissions, power steering, power brakes. This is power brakes. As you can see, there's a great big vacuum diaphragm. That's the biggest vacuum hose on the entire car, goes to the engine, creates a suction that's going to pull the diaphragm to assist your application of this push rod. You know this, it hooks up to the brake pedal arm in your drawing from last week.
The booster comes between the pedal and the master cylinder and utilizes the vacuum from the engine, assisting the brake pedal and makes it easier to apply brakes.
You probably already have enough information on that. If not, you can review these videos called How Disc Brakes Work, Part 1 and 2.
I want to ask something real quick.
Yeah.
Real quick. So have you ever seen those car washes that you go through and they tell you keep your foot off the brake, put it in neutral, and
Yeah.
it goes automatic? Okay. There was a circumstance that I had before I even learned anything about anything, where I was inside and I got a phone call and I didn't take my foot off the brake. It says it says take your foot off the brake. So I don't know, I was distracted, went through the car wash. As soon as I came out, all I heard was like a hissing sound, and like I heard a pop and then I heard a hissing sound, and I was like, oh, what the heck is that? And once I started trying to drive, I had to literally press the brake as far down as possible for me to even slow down. And luckily I wasn't too far from my house, but I ended up taking it to the mechanic, and he said that I needed to replace the brake booster. What would have caused that?
Just stepping on the brakes too hard?
Well, I think it was
I've never heard anything like that.
I think it was going through the car wash, because they warn you not to keep your foot on the brake and to put it in neutral.
Yeah.
I had it in neutral, but I guess I had my foot on the brake and didn't notice it. So
Right.
I don't know whether I did something to cause that damage, but I just remember hearing the pop, the hiss, and then I was, oh dang, I lost all my brake fluid. That's what I had thought, but I didn't see nothing underneath. I don't know. I was just wondering if you knew what that would have been.
Yeah, you didn't lose all your fluid. What you lose the valving or the diaphragm inside the power brake booster. That's got to be expensive. Did you fix it? Yeah.
It was
sure
expensive. It was.
Yeah. That's why I quit getting my car washed. That's why I drive a dirty car. Okay, so that right there is disc brakes. If you want to know more about disc brakes, check out those two, How Disc Brakes Works, Part 1 and 2. You can also check out...
That's actually a good channel. I like watching that one. The Auto Tech Labs. That one's pretty good.
Problem is, they weren't English speakers, and
Yeah,
you know, some of their stuff is
super technical.
yeah. So, that's disc brakes. Let me go back. All right, right there. There we go. All right, so we already talked about brake linings. We talked about how to diagnose brake linings, how we want to inspect them side by side, side to side, look for uneven wear, right? Most people just take out the brake pads and throw them away. We want to use them diagnostically, just like spark plugs. Most people just take them out and throw them away. I want to use them diagnostically because I want to see what's going on inside the cylinder, and the spark plug is the best way to do that. But you just have to understand that there's valuable diagnostic information going on there, and utilize it, because you know there's really no other way of knowing. I mean, the diagnostic trouble codes is only going to tell you whether it's bad or not, but the spark plugs can tell you before it's bad enough to throw a code. All right, so that's disc brakes. And how much did we talk about analog brake system?
A little bit, I think.
Very little.
Did you watch the video, or you just want us to watch it twice? Because I know we talked about it a little bit.
I don't think we watched a video about it though.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know.
Well, let me just put it this way. Give you a brief analog brake system. I gotta try not to be in a hurry. Analog brake system. I was thinking I could just assign you the videos, but if I assign you the videos, you probably won't be able to visualize in your mind what I'm talking about, which would make it inefficient. So let's just do this. Analog brake system is a safety system. And what it does is it keeps the wheels from locking up, because if the wheels lock up during a braking event, the tires are going to skid. And if the tires skid, you got little balls of rubber that start tearing off the tire, and your tire is like rolling on top of these little balls of rubber. And as a result, your braking distance is increased, and also your ability to steer out of danger is removed. So the analog brake system uses a computer. Which computer? The ABS computer. And speed sensors on each wheel. Did you read the brakes chapter in the book?
Yep.
Yeah, good, okay. To keep wheels from locking up, which would cause tires to skid / loss of traction. Yep. Okay. 2002 diesel particulate filter bank 1. Oh, it's diesel? Okay, so you haven't run your DPF. Yeah, okay, that explains that. Why'd you get a Q7 diesel?
Diesel 3.0.
Yeah, come on, man. You could have had a Toyota. I'm just saying. Could have had a Toyota. You'd be happiest guy in town. Okay, so that's a common problem. People don't run their DPF cycle. So yeah, diesel particulate filter bank 1 should be on both sides though, you would think. Is it a 4-cylinder?
6.
6? A V6 or a straight 6?
No, B6.
V6. That's weird. You get it on one side.
DPF, I surface the DPF sensor. I clean the AGR. I check the.
You have to talk louder because we can't hear you.
Yeah, that catalytic converter.
Yeah. Okay. Do me a solid, man.
Yeah.
After we get this car fixed,
Mm-hmm.
sell it. No, I'm serious. I'm serious. You can probably get, I mean, right now is the top of the market, right? You can get top dollar for it, whatever top dollar is for an Audi.
Yeah.
Sell it and get yourself a Toyota, man.
Yeah,
Do yourself a favor, because European imports are just going to make you sad. That's
and broke.
Yeah, right. And you know,
I've been mentioning that to a couple of people, and they're like, no, German cars are the best.
Yeah,
Everybody knows that. I'm like, no, seriously, I'm taking this class, and instructors no.
He just hated.
right. The question is, do you love drama? If you love drama, European import's a perfect way to get a lot of it, right?
Yeah.
But not me. Not me. I just like driving like 300, 400,000 miles, chilling, knowing anybody can fix the car, right? And they're not going to ream me because it's just basically a Toyota. My Lexus is going to be just like a Toyota. My Corvette's going to be basically a Chevrolet. My Infiniti is not going to be basically a Nissan, but you know, the Acura is going to be basically a Honda. Do yourself a favor. I know they're cute. I know everybody wants to say, well, I'm going to express my individuality by getting this car that nobody else has. Okay, well, who are you going to get to fix it? Nobody. You know, I'm going to get the car that everybody knows how to fix, right? The Toyota. I'm just saying, if you like drama, a German import's the perfect way of getting it. I don't like drama from cars though. I get plenty from people. Yeah. So I'm just okay. Well, I mean, okay. Let me just point out that somebody came in last in World War II for the exact same reason. See, right? The Americans were making the Sherman tanks, super reliable, super cheap to make, super easy to fix, super easy to maintain. The Germans were making the most beautiful tanks in the world, but they were like made by craftsmen. Nobody could fix them. They broke down all the time, you know, just like German imports today. And as a result, they lost the war, right? Because they couldn't keep them in service. Yeah, the King Tiger, what a tank it was. Yeah, every 50 hours, you know, you had to go through all this, right? I'm just saying, you want drama from your, it's like having a purebred dog, right? Oh, I got a $5,000 dog, but you know, if it gets a raindrop on its forehead, it's going to get pneumonia. do you want drama or not? I don't want drama. That's why I get flea-ridden mongrels, because after all, they've got all this, you know, super resistance to all disease. I'm just saying. Do what you like, but that's what I would do. So that based on, you know, 42 years in this industry, I'm just telling you that's, I mean, why'd you get an SUV? Why would you get an SUV that wasn't a Toyota? I mean, why would you get a small SUV that wasn't a Toyota, or a big SUV that wasn't like a Suburban? Get a Nissan Armada. Why'd you get something with a CVT, right? Hey, incidentally, Mr. Burks, do you have any Nissans with CVTs?
No.
Good.
No Nissan.
I was going to tell you the same thing. If you got a Nissan with a CVT, all of y'all, if you got a Nissan with a CVT, get rid of it now before it burns you, because it will. If you keep it long enough, it's gonna lay an egg in your soup.
Yeah, I just saw the car yesterday.
Yeah, it's going to be the happiest day of your life too. So I'm just saying.
What's CVT?
Continuously variable transmission. It's a transmission that uses a flexible steel belt with cones. And the problem is, once the cones wear out, the hardness wears out. And once they go bad, nobody around here knows how to fix them. And it's like $5,000 just to fix them. And nobody can get them to last. And if they do get them to last, it's going to cost you half of what the car's worth just to fix it. What? Okay, so I'm just saying, at least on a practical basis, you know, I had a student from 2 semesters ago that had a couple of Nissans with CVTs, and he went through the first one. It was just like a nightmare. Like every 3 months he had to bring it back, you know, and this was after thousands and thousands of dollars. He was trying to maintain a fleet, just like Mr. Burks. He was trying to maintain a fleet of 5 vehicles for his family. And if you're going to do that, what you have to do is you have to remove the drama from your fleet. Yeah? Does that make sense? Now, to me, you know, people say I'm not a car guy. Maybe I should be ashamed, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? I've had so much terrible drama with cars, right? I'll be going to a job interview and the car will break down. That's actually happened to me. And it's like, why didn't I get a reliable car instead of this, right? Why didn't I get a reliable car instead of this expensive car? When my kids were young, this youngster, this little 6-year-old, 7-year-old was trying to make me jealous, right? So she said, well, my friend lives in a 3,000 square foot house, and it's just her parents and her sister and her. So there's 4 of them living in this 3,000 square foot house in northern Laverne. And I said, that's cool, but you watch. The next time the economy takes a dump, they're going to lose that house, because That's like a $700,000 house for 4 people. You know, I had 8 people in a 1,500 square foot house. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't wishing them badly, but that's just, I'm old enough to recognize patterns now. And guess what? When the economy took a dump, they lost the house because that's like a $4,000 house payment. I didn't lose the house. You know why? Because I got a $600 house payment. You know why? Because we were crammed in like sardines. So the same thing's true with I'm trying to make the point that we don't want drama about certain things, right? I mean, I've got anxiety about things like that. I can't be having a lot of drama about stuff that I need, right? Drama is for luxuries, not for staples. I don't want to be worried about where my next meal comes from. And I sure as hell don't want to be worried about my finicky car.
Right.
Because what we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to talk about electronic parking brakes. Almost all the new stuff has CVT, continuously variable transmission. Almost all the new stuff, especially the small stuff, has CVT. In fact, I love the Nissans, but when they went to the CVTs, I had to lose the recommendation on them. Sad to say, because the old stuff just works better. I mean, supposedly it gets you better gas mileage, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, I was driving it up to Arrowhead and I was just like, you know what? This sounds weird. If this was a regular transmission, I'd say there was something wrong with it. So, point I was trying to make was that what we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to talk about electronic parking brakes. Well, electronic parking brakes has a caliper with a motor, a CVT, and a transmission inside the caliper. Can you see anything that might go wrong? Caliper gets hot as hell, and you got all these electronics plus an electric motor plus a transmission plus a CVT inside the caliper. You think you're going to be able to buy that caliper at O'Reilly's?
No.
Oh, creo. I think you're going to have to go to the dealer. And when you go to the dealer, that's got to be $800-900 easy for a freaking caliper. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, you can do what you want, folks, but I'm just telling you, you know, some people like to express themselves throughout their cars. Fine. Okay. Express yourselves with the car. But when you start talking about getting Alfa Romeos, Maseratis, all these weird makes of Saabs and Volvos, all this stuff where you would actually have to, if you bought it new, you would have to take it to Newport Beach to get it serviced. You know, where's the nearest Alfa Romeo dealer or Maserati dealer? Right.
On the 10.
Yeah.
On the 10 freeway right there. They're building them.
Oh, great. Yeah. Good luck with that. Yeah, and there's an Audi on the 210, right? I'm just saying. I try to avoid drama in cars because I'm scared of cars. You know why I'm scared of cars? Because I do it all day. Just like so many people in the medical profession are scared of these diseases because I mean they've seen what disease does to people.
Tell me, Rocky, what are those the rejuvenating brake systems?
A regenerative brake system?
Regenerating, yeah.
Okay, what they're doing is they're reversing the coils on the electric motor and they're turning it into an alternator. So what it's doing is when it's slowing down, what they're doing is they're charging the battery with it. Well, that requires horsepower, right? We're turning mechanical energy back into electrical energy to charge the batteries. So now we don't have to start the internal combustion engine to charge the batteries. Plus, it's going to slow down the electric motor.
Okay.
Because after all, okay, think of it this way. Do you know what an alternator does?
Mhm.
You know, the alternator is the little thing on your car which is going to charge the battery. Well, it takes horsepower to turn that because you're turning magnets in the.
I know how it works.
Yeah. Okay, good. So it takes power to turn that. So what they're basically doing is they're full fielding the alternator, which takes tons of power to turn. Except now what they've done is they've taken the windings of the electric motor, and instead of using electrical energy to turn it into mechanical energy, now they're using mechanical energy, which is the engine's inertia, and turning it back into electrical energy. So as a result, you don't use your brakes hardly at all. And it charges the battery, so you get better gas mileage. Regenerative braking, yeah. Regenerate to make it generate again, I guess.
Let's see.
Yep. That makes sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yesterday I ended up ordering the Model Y.
Really?
Yeah.
You must have faith in our power grid.
Yeah, you know, there's many of those. I know, but it's just for me, you know. I hope not many people will get it more.
Well, good. Yeah, because maybe Professor can ride his coconut bicycle to charge up your car.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're talking about the analog brake system. Let me show you a video. Ah, come on. There we go. Right there, right there, right there. No, I just don't feel it. So I'm going to go here and say ABS. Of course, when you go ABS, it's all about abs, right? So there we go. This is Mazda, Australia, so of course everything's going to be on the wrong side.
During emergency braking or on slippery surfaces, a driver may apply braking force that...
All right, this right here is the brake pedal. That right there is twin reservoirs. That's the master cylinder right there. And what the ABS is going to do is it's going to use the computer. It's going to monitor the wheel speeds at every wheel. And it's going to use the computer if it sees a wheel starting to slow down relative to all its neighbors, right? Because if I'm slowing down this car, every wheel should be going the same speed as I slow down, right? Well, if they see, if the rest of my wheels are going 30 miles an hour and one of my wheels is going 0, that wheel is locked up, which means that tire is skidding, which means I've lost all directional and frictional control of that tire. So what it's going to do is it's going to be constantly reading the wheel speed sensors, and when it sees a tire about to skid or skidding, it's going to release the brakes to that particular individual wheel. So it's going to speed up again, and then it's going to apply the brakes again. And if it starts to skid again, it's going to release the brakes again. The wheel's going to speed up. It's going to apply the brakes again. This can happen up to 20 times a second. As a result, the ABS system is always going to give you the maximum possible braking from every wheel. And it's going to keep the tires from locking up, even if you're on ice or on a wet surface. Let's see.
that is greater than the tire's capacity for grip. If this happens, the wheels can lock up, causing the...
Look, tires aren't spinning. As a result, they're just rolling on little rubber balls. That means you could end up anywhere.
Vehicle to
It's a lot less fun than it looks.
skid out of control. By preventing this lockup, the vehicle stops sooner and remains under the driver's control. The anti-lock braking system, or ABS, provides this assistance. So how does it work? Sensors on each wheel constantly measure their rotational speed. The ABS control module samples this data continually, comparing the rotational speed of each wheel. If one or more wheels is rotating slower than the others, a condition that will bring the wheel to lock, the system takes action. It instructs the brake master cylinder to direct brake force away from the locking wheel, so it releases and regains traction. As the wheel begins to turn again, braking force is momentarily reapplied. This process is repeated up to 20 times a second and causes the characteristic pulsing feel through the brake pedal.
Now, back when us oldsters went through driver's training, they told us that if we had to stop, we were supposed to pump the brakes.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not how you do ABS brakes. ABS is the 3 S's, right? Stomp, stay, and steer. That means you stomp on the brakes, you stay on the brakes, and you steer yourself out of danger. Because you stomp on the brakes and you stay on the brakes, because the ABS system is going to be way faster, way better, and way smarter at applying the brakes than you are. So just stomp on the brakes and stay on it. You're never going to skid. The ABS system is going to make sure of that. And it's just going to, well, basically, it'll be pumping the brakes 20 times a second, which is way faster than you can do it.
As a result, the driver's intended brake force is applied without locking up and skidding, allowing the driver to maintain steering control while braking, meaning that stopping distances may also be reduced. The vehicle on the left has ABS. The vehicle on the right does not. Both vehicles are traveling at 100 kilometers per hour. Let's simulate an emergency braking situation and see what happens. Both drivers apply their brakes at the same time and with the same force. But the vehicle with ABS maintains control while braking and is able to steer around the obstacle. ABS helps the driver avoid accidents by preventing lockup and loss of traction. This allows the driver to maintain steering control during heavy braking and may help to reduce stopping distance.
Okay, folks, do me a favor. There's also another ABS video from, well, there's also another ABS video from BMW that, oh, see, Scotty Kilmer will help you. There's also another ABS video from BMW that you can watch. Boy, we're so short on time. This one, right? Well, there's Safe Braking by Bosch. That'll help you too. This one, Understanding Analog Brake Systems. I would like it if you would watch that when you have some time. Safe Braking with Bosch is a good video as well. Here's the important part for our purposes. Don't ever buy a car that's got an ABS light on. Don't ever buy it. Yeah, CVT, that's correct. Yeah, they have a bunch, right? Thank you, Ryan. Don't ever buy a car with an ABS light on, and they'll tell you it's probably just a fuse, but if they believed it was just a fuse, they would have changed the fuse because that's cheap and easy. No, what's happened is they took it to a mechanic who replaced the fuse, and then the fuse blew, and they said, you know what, get rid of this car. Now, if you already have a car that's got an ABS light on, bring it in, we'll put the good scan tools on it, and we'll find out what the problem is. Could be a wheel speed sensor, could be easy to fix, $10, $15, $20, $30, well, probably closer to 30, 10, 15, 20 minutes, let's put it that way. Now, it could be that ABS light is just a simple fix. Could be, but the odds are against you. Like I said, people in general will not get rid of cars that they're already familiar with for transitory reasons, by which I mean to say they won't do it for a small fix, right? They will not get rid of cars because they think a thermostat might be bad. They won't, because thermostats are cheap and they're quick to change. So what they're going to do is they're going to go to a mechanic, say for instance with a blown head gasket overheating, and the mechanic's going to say, you know what, this thing has a blown head gasket, you need to get rid of this car. So then they're going to go on offer up and say, well, it overheats, but it's probably just the thermostat. Because if they told you it was a blown head, if they told you it was probably a blown head gasket, you'd say, okay, tell you what, take $2,000 off the price because that's what it's going to cost to fix it. Now, whether it's the ABS computer or the ABS controller, it's probably going to cost you $800 to fix each. That's why I say if the car has an ABS light on it, don't buy it. There ain't no car in the world that's worth that. So if your car has an ABS light on it, bring it in. We'll put a scan tool to it. We'll see if maybe it's a wheel speed sensor. It could be a happy day. It could be a disconnected wire. Could be, but that's not the way to bet, right? Right?
So what is the vehicle saying to you when the ABS light comes on and say, for instance, and then it goes away and then it comes on?
That means that the computer is monitoring itself and it's finding a problem, and then the problem's going away, and then it turns off the light. Then it finds the problem again, then the monitors keep running, and then if they don't find the problem after enough times of running, it's going to turn off the light again. That's called an intermittent problem. So what we need to do, thanks, it's a great question. What we want to do then is we want to put the scan tool in there, and we want to find out, remember, there's two types of codes. There's stored, well, two main types of codes. There's stored codes and history codes. Well, the history codes is a code you had, but now you don't have it. Yeah. So that it would show up on that. And then we'd say, okay, well, that gives us a hint. Well, if it's a wheel speed sensor, that's relatively easy, usually cheap to fix, as long as it's not like a broken trigger wheel or something. But if it's a computer issue, that makes it rough. Anyways, it's better to know either way. Now, here's the good news, Gabe. ABS is only going to come in during emergency braking, right? As long as you don't have some major problem, ABS is only going to be an issue on emergency braking. In fact, most people's ABS could go out and they would never notice the difference. However, you get yourself on a wet asphalt, or you get yourself on ice or something, someplace where you really need the ABS, that could be a terrible thing, right? So, anyways, we have the really good scan tools, so we can go into the factory software, and we usually have pretty good luck figuring out what the problem is. But you know, it does go through computers and it does go through modules, and those things are really, really expensive. I mean, controllers, and those things are really, really expensive. So watch out. That's one of the pitfalls that people can. That's one of the big mistakes that people can make when they are buying used cars off of OfferUp, Craigslist, whatever. Just so you know. So if you have that issue, Gabe, we'll be back in the shop soon, unless you know somebody's got a scan tool with a ABS
Well,
on.
I own a little 97 Nissan pickup truck.
Yeah.
And I had little screwy things happen here and there. I haven't been driving it no more for a while, but I still, take it around the block. I don't really drive it as because I have a work truck now, but it used to be my old little work truck. But now I have a work truck with the service body and everything. So it's just been sitting. But, I don't want to get rid of it. I've had it for years. It's been reliable.
Right.
A lot of people have told me, don't get rid of it. Don't get rid of it. Those little trucks are good. Those little trucks are good. But it has little things. Of course, I know it's a 97. It's going to be having, and that was one of the issues. The ABS light would come on, but then it would go away for a long time. Then it would come on again. So I want it to be my little work truck now, to work on it. I want to be able to work on it, do whatever I can, get familiar with it.
Help everybody move. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's exactly it. So that's the perfect example of what we want to be working on, right? Because you just make a list of all the little quirks and we just work through them, one at a time. We're going to find out some are hard to fix, some are super simple to fix, some are not worth fixing, and some are, $5-10. You've been driving around with it screwed up for, 5 years. So that's the good news about what we do. I mean, there's
my heater core went out on it. How big is that?
I don't know. On that car, I'm not sure. Hopefully you don't have to take the dash apart. That would suck. But I know who knows, Mr. Doctor.
I was told that the whole dash would have to come apart. I just got bypassed or whatever, but now I have no heater.
Yeah, you got no defroster either, which is a safety hazard. If you go into fog or something like that, your windows will fog up and you'll have no way of keeping them clear. That's a safety issue. Yeah, so I know Dr. YouTube.
Be a lot.
Yeah, Dr. YouTube will tell you, right? In case folks, if you're ever wondering how big of a job a certain job is, Dr. YouTube's always the first person I would ask, because I mean, it beats the hell. I mean, you ask a mechanic, if he starts rubbing his hands together, that's
expensive.
That's usually a bad sign. All right. So, yeah, so watch those ABS videos if you would, folks, because we got a grip of stuff we got to take care of. Questions, comments, thoughts on that before we move on? Yeah. All right, let's go back. Hey, Gerardo, where is your Highland Park friend? Hey, Super Mecánico, ¿dónde está tu amigo de Los Angeles? All right, here's what we need to talk about. Drum brakes. Now, we use drum brakes for 100 years. We're still using drum brakes, in fact. But we usually only see them on cheaper cars now, because I guess they're cheaper to make. They're a pain to service, I'll tell you that much. Compared to disc brakes, they're a pain to service. But we used them for a long time. We used them back before we even had hydraulic brakes. So I'm going to come around like this. I'm going to come around like that. And then I'm going to come like this. I made this drawing like 3 times today, so I'm starting to get good at it, allegedly. As soon as I say that, I always screw up my drawing. There you go. Frenos de tambor, yeah? And that right there is a brake drum. Hey, Gabe, did I ever tell you why my class is like a broken drum? You can't beat it. Stupid. That's some dumb joke right there. Okay. So that's a brake drum. And how the brake drum works is it's the opposite of the disc brake. Drum brake, we're going to take 2 brake shoes and we're going to push them out against the drum, the inside of the drum. So no brake pads anymore because we're dealing with drum brakes. So what we got is this thing looks like this. And then you come up with some funky shape. It doesn't really matter. It looks like a Godzilla or something. And then come like this. Yeah, it doesn't matter. All it matters is you got to have a hole every once in a while. Big hole here, big hole there. Yeah, there we go. That right there is a brake shoe. And it's going to have a brake lining right there. So that's going to be brake lining. And this thing right here is going to be called a brake shoe. Zapatos de frenos, yeah? Where's Anna Maria?
I have no idea.
What the hell? How soon they forget, right?
I'll call her on break.
She probably heard that I went to a church with no masks inside, and now she's scared to get
Yeah.
coronavirus through the USB port. Yeah. Now that I admitted to be an arch criminal, right?
Yeah.
California Secret Service swooping helicopter. What's that helicopter I hear? Yeah. It wasn't in California. The point I was trying to make was drum brakes. What we got is, well, can I show you what they really look like just to confirm
Yeah,
reality?
yeah. Show us.
Didn't I blow your mind this time? Ah, man. Back in the day,
Oldie but goodie.
yeah.
Athletics.
Well, that right there is a drum brake. That's a brake drum right there. It's got the studs in it. They don't usually make them that way. There's a brake shoe right here, and there's a brake shoe right here. Well, there's another drum right there. See, it's got the ventilating fins on it. That's to cool it down because it's going to get hot. There's a brake shoe right there. There's a brake shoe right there. Now this thing right here is called a wheel cylinder. And what the wheel cylinder is going to do is it's going to push the brake shoes out against the drum. And the wheel cylinder has got 2 pistons in it. The fluid comes in between it, so the pistons come this way. Instead of what we're used to, you know, single piston on most disc brake calipers. Now, let's see. This is good. Shoot, you're not going to see that. Let me show you because I had problems with this before. I'm going to show you. Huh. Well, I thought I was going to show you. Let me show you this instead. Okay, so let's see. There is a wheel cylinder. And the wheel cylinder goes between the brake shoes. Remember, there's one brake shoe on this side, one brake shoe on this side. There's a wheel cylinder between the two, and there's pistons inside the wheel cylinders that are going to push the shoe out against the inside of the drum. Okay, so what do we got? We got a brake bleeder screw right here. Remember, bleeding brakes means we're going to remove the air from the system because that's going to keep us from getting a firm pedal. You can compress the air, you can't compress the liquid. So you got to get all the air out, so we're going to get a firm pedal. That's called bleeding the brakes. Purgando los frenos, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
This and this are the bolts we use to connect it to the backing plate. And this is where the brake line comes in. This and this are boots. Every boot does the same thing. It keeps what's inside in, keeps what's outside out, right? Inside, we've got 2 pistons in a precision bore. And that's not going to stay that way if we let cast iron filings, brake linings, dirt, grease get inside there. So the boots are there to protect those precision surfaces. That's a wheel cylinder. Now let me show you what it looks like. Really, on the inside. Well, there's your bleeder valve. In case you ever wonder what a bleeder valve looks like, that's what it looks like. Now,
Where?
yep. This thing right here is called a cup seal. And the reason it's called a cup seal is because it's a seal shaped like a cup, made of plastic rubber. Cup seal is the strongest seal made. And the reason is because of Pascal's law. If you can see the shape of this cup, what's going to happen with Pascal's law is not only is it going to be pushing in this direction, but it's going to be pushing the lips into tighter contact with the cylinder they're in. As a result, the higher the pressure gets, the better these seals are going to seal. And there's a piston. Remember, the reason we have a seal in a hydraulic system is so that nothing gets past the piston. Piston's probably going to be made of aluminum, probably. And there's the dust boot right there. This spring is here to keep the seals from collapsing when we take our foot off the pedal. But that's a cup seal. The pressure is going to push this direction. That's pretty clear. But Pascal's law says it's also going to push against the walls of this cup seal to make it seal even tighter. So it's got 2 of these pistons, one here, one there, 2 of the cup seals. Remember, on a cup seal, the lips always face the pressure, yeah? And there's dust boots and a bleeder valve. I'll go to the next one. It looks like right there. Yeah, there you go. That's what it looks like on the inside, a cutaway. When you cut a chunk out of it, there's a piston, there's a piston. Those are both made of aluminum. You can tell because it's that whitish silver stuff. And then the cup seals with the lip facing inward. The brake fluid's going to come in here and it's going to push this piston that way and this piston that way. Yeah? Make sense? Do I have to draw it? Okay. Let me know if I have to draw it, but hope so. Hope not. Oh, I've got 2 copies of everything. Well, last one and then I'm done, right? Okay, brake fluid comes down this passage and it hits this cup seal and this cup seal, pushing this piston and that piston out. And that's going to push the brake shoes against the drum, slowing the vehicle. Yep.
Okay.
So maybe I will have time. Apologize for my hands.
Why would they use 2 different kinds of like that?
2 different kinds of brakes?
My car, yeah, mine has drum and disc, I think.
Yeah, because they're trying to save money, probably. Or cynically, I would say, because they want to sell 4-wheel disc as a more expensive option. The same reason, like on the 87 Camaros, they had the V6, and they also had the V8 with the throttle body injection. And then if you wanted to spend even more money, you could get the V8 with the port fuel injection. It's a pricing package. Same reason why they have leather seats in cars, right? They put crappy cheap seats in there, so you'll say, "Man, I really want leather." Right? Same reason they sell Audis. That was a joke. I mean, can we make jokes about this, or is that gonna make you sad? Okay, this right here, my friends, is how drum brakes looks on a truck. Instead of having them side by side, they're top and bottom. And this brake shoe right here is probably 6 inches wide. You can see it's got lots of meat on it too, right? It's got a S cam, which tells us this is air brakes. You got a return spring here, return spring here. The interesting thing is this right here is a trigger wheel for the wheel speed sensor on the analog brake system. See that? That's a trigger wheel. It's got little teeth. And you can see that it's got 10 wheel studs and they're freaking huge. That is what it looks like on big truck. Now, let me go ahead and show you, just before we go to break, let me go ahead and show you some important things you need to see when it comes to, well, let me make it close to the drawing I'm going to make for you too. Well, yeah, let's try this one. There you go. There's a wheel cylinder here. There's a brake shoe there. There's a brake shoe there. Retaining pins here and here to hold the brake shoes against the backing plate. And then this thing right here is a return spring. This thing right here is a return spring. What you need a return spring for is just like inside the master cylinder, you got return springs. When the pistons push the shoes against the drum and you take your foot off the pedal, the return springs are going to pull the shoes back in, thus taking all the fluid inside the wheel cylinder and pushing it back into the master cylinder. Yeah? So those are return springs. Now up here, you're going to get a self-adjuster that I'm not going to have time to explain before break. And also, well, this is probably a front, but no, it's parking brake. So this is the parking brake setup for drum brakes. And it's also going to have a self-adjuster to compensate for lining wear to keep your brake pedal height the same. Chuck, did you get a read on that last code?
Yep.
Well, good. All right. You want to do 4 minutes on that, or do you want to save it till after? What'd you get?
I mean, it's got to do with the particulates, too much soot, and bank one exhaust.
Yeah, but that's the 2002. What about the 2358 or whatever it was?
The P2463
Yeah.
still has the same thing.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Well, did you folks look up at the YouTube? Did you look in the internet? That would be the first bet, right? Rather than see, because the thing is, you know, guess how many Q7s I've ever worked on? Guess how many 2007 Q7s I've ever worked on?
0.
Yeah. So rather than asking a generalist, you know, I mean, there's some stuff you want to go to the generalist to. There's some stuff you want to see a specialist about, right? So that would be my first approach. The DPF thing happens a lot because DPF only runs at certain times. Diesel particulate filter. Basically, the problem with diesel motors and why they haven't taken off in the United States is because they make a lot of soot, which is basically carbon. It's, you know, what makes the inside of your chimney black. So that's a problem. It throws all kinds of particulate matter in the air. So the DPF is diesel particulate filter. Basically what it's doing is it's, oh, did you run it out of urea? Did you buy it like that? See, it uses urea, which is basically made of urine, and it sprays the soot and it interacts with the soot and it brings it out of the air. Now, if you don't clean that filter or if you don't run the regeneration cycle, you get to find out why you shouldn't have bought an Audi. I mean, sad to say. I mean, I'm going to help you no matter what kind of car you get, but I'm just, you know, we gotta be real about putting ourselves in liability for, you know, stuff we don't want to deal with, right? Because Sugar Free and Snoop Dogg just released a new single in April about what you should be thinking with. So I just want to say, when it comes to buying cars, you got to be thinking with your brain and not with your eyes, right? Right.
Right.
So
Do you know the X has a new album?
I'm sorry, what?
X has a new
Yeah, I saw
album.
that. Yeah, thanks. Have you heard it?
Great too. I haven't listened to it yet. I just found out about it.
So when's the concert?
I'm not sure. I'll find out though. I know they're going to tour.
Can you imagine an X concert where everyone's wearing masks as they mosh?
Everyone's going to be old.
Yeah, everyone's going to be moshing 6 feet apart.
Yeah, if they can even make it to the dance floor.
I'll get wheeled into the dance floor. Yeah,
Yeah.
them's were the days. I'm glad I was alive. Yeah.
Yep. It was
All
fun.
right. Well, it's 7:30, folks. So why don't we meet back at 7:45? Hit it
Yep.
hard. Yeah. All
Yep.
excited? Can't wait. All right. See you then.
Okay.
Hey. Hey, Chuck.
Huh?
Oh shoot.
I said, hey, Chuck, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you. How's your mom?
Good. Yeah, her house didn't burn down.
Very good. I'm glad to hear
Yeah.
that.
How's Arnold? Have you seen him?
Who?
Have you seen Arnold?
Yeah.
Arnold?
Resume. Here we go. All right. So let us go back here. There's drum brake, retaining springs there. And we've got return springs here. We got return springs there. And they're actually going to pivot off of this thing right here. Wheel cylinder is going to push those brake shoes out against the drums. And that's basically how you've got your drum brakes to work. Now I need to show you something just so you're aware, so you don't make even more tragic mistakes than you've already made. Let's see right about, well, I saw them, and then this. There you go, Chuck. Grab a wrench. What do you think about that?
Four-wheeling.
Pretty good.
Okay, it could be four-wheeling, but when I look at yeah, actually you might be right. This is what happens when you get water. See, the disc brakes have been used on airplanes ever since the 30s. My dad taught me that. He was a pilot. So, but that's because they shed water off the rotors, which gives you good coefficient of friction on the brakes. The problem with drum brakes is once you get water in them, it don't come out. And centrifugal force is going to sling the water out, and it's not going to leave the drum. So that's the main reason we're using disc brakes, is for better wet weather performance. So what you can see here is what you see a lot if you work on cars from back east. It's just everything's rusty and corroded. You think that self-adjuster is going to work still? Mm-mm. And as you can see, it's just filled with rust. And it has a couple of examples of just terrible. When you see these cars from back east, everything's covered in rust, and really makes you appreciate why you don't want to get a car from out of state. All right, so let me see something like, for instance, right here. Well, no, that's not a good example. Let me find a good example then.
So drum brakes are still being used in modern cars, correct?
Yeah, in fact, the wife's Nissan Versa 2020 still has them. I don't know why. Okay, here's a good example. Here's what you need to understand. See how this brake lining is way shorter than this brake lining? Look, this brake lining only goes up to 10 o'clock. This brake lining goes up to 1 o'clock. See the difference?
Mm-hmm.
See, if we can go straight across on this brake lining, it only goes up to here. Often, usually on drum brakes, you're going to see that it's got 2 long shoes and 2 short shoes. Actually, the shoes are the same size. The difference is the length of the friction material. That's because there's a mechanism in most drum brakes that's going to make the front shoe push the rear shoe into the drum. It actually gives you leverage, which is why back in the day when we had drum brakes, we didn't really need to have power brakes. It was an option. Well, power brakes is a requirement with disc brakes because you don't get this leverage. Like I said, when the front shoe pushes into the drum, it's going to push this in, push the secondary into the drum with a great deal of leverage, a great deal of force. Maybe you can see that, but it's like that. As a result, the secondary shoe, the back shoe, has to be way bigger. So if you have a drum brake setup that's got 2 short frictions and 2 long frictions, the long friction is always going back. Those are called the secondary shoes. If all 4 are the same, then don't worry about it. But I'm going to make a drawing for you, and I wanted you to understand the drawing. Return spring, wheel cylinder. This is part of the self-adjuster mechanism. There's the self-adjuster right there. And this right here is the parking brake, emergency brake lever, just so you know. That's a new Mopar. 8 3/4 end. Yeah, I think, well, I mean, different manufacturers are going to have different setups. So you're just going to have to make some generalizations about it all. Right there. Nice, nice and small. There we got wheel cylinder, return spring, shoe, shoe. And we got the self adjuster right there. Now that I've been really getting into it hard, I've been seeing, oh shoot, now that I've been really getting into it hard, I've been seeing that most, if not many, of the YouTube videos, technical videos on YouTube, have a significant number of errors to them. Everyone except mine. This is a joke. There we go. Old school. There we go. Old school General Motors. Believe that. Okay, return spring, wheel cylinders, self-adjuster, self-adjusting mechanism, retaining spring. Those were the days, my friends. There's brake drum for you, looking all pretty.
May I mention something, Mr. Real quick?
Yeah, please.
These shoes right here, I pay attention because they're old school. A lot of the rear disc brake rotors have parking brake shoes in the inner hatch.
Yeah, correct.
So, I mean, pay attention because you're going to see it in one form or another.
Right. Yeah, there you go. True that. Although the GMs tend to have like a ring now, the modern GMs. I had it around here somewhere. Shoot. So let me go back and let's make this drawing to see if we can make some generalizations about drum brakes. All right, so we're going to start off with a wheel cylinder. This is going to be a big drawing, yeah? Big as a paper. So we got a wheel cylinder there. It's got 2 pistons in it. It's got brake fluid coming in the back so it can push the 2 pistons out like this, away from each other. And then this is going to come over like this, big old arc. And this shape does not matter. I'm just going to make it like this because, you know, that's changing through, you know, whatever different models and manufacturers. Put a big hole here, small hole there, small hole there. And I'm going to come over here like this, sort of in an arc. I'm going to make a similar shape on this side, although it doesn't have to be perfect, you know, because it doesn't really matter. Little bump. Trying to make it look like I know what I'm doing, despite all evidence to the contrary. Over here, I'm going to put the self adjuster. Over here, I'm going to put the wheel cylinder. I'm going to put a big old brake lining on this one. And just for exaggeration's sake, I'm going to put a short one on this one. So this side is the front going that way. And then I'm going to come on here with, I guess I'll just come in like this with a, oh, guess it's nice to put the holes in there, huh? So this thing right here is a return spring. So that's going to be a primary shoe. And that's going to be a secondary shoe. There we go. Now you're going to have a retaining spring here that are going to keep it sucked down onto the backing plate, which is the piece of sheet metal that it all attaches to. Could have 2 return springs, could have, you know, that's not the important part. The important part is that you understand what the parts do. Now, sometimes these springs get old, sometimes they break. If they break, we don't replace one spring at a time. They sell these brake hardware kits that are going to contain all the springs, all the hardware. If the brakes are old, sometimes the hardware will break. We just get a whole set of brake hardware. It's not the worst idea to replace all those springs. You know, not every 5 years, but, you know, if it's never been done, it might not be the worst idea. I don't do it unless I have to, because, you know, I'm cheap like that. But what does the self-adjuster do? The self-adjuster is going to compensate for lining wear by continuously moving the shoes out towards the drum so that the distance between the shoes and the drum stays the same, so that how far the pistons have to move to apply the brakes stays the same, so that the pedal height stays the same. See, back in the olden days, we didn't used to have self-adjusters. As a result, about every 3 months, you'd have to take your car to the mechanic to have them adjust the brakes so that your pedal height didn't just go to the floor. So that's why we have self-adjusters now. Now, see, here's the thing about self-adjusters, though. Self-adjusters only adjust when you hit the brakes when you're backing up. So if you never do that, for instance, people with circular driveways, if you never back up or don't frequently back up and hit the brakes, these things won't self-adjust, and you'll notice that the pedal keeps sinking further and further towards the floor. So here's what we're going to do. After we replace the shoes on a brake job, first thing we're going to do after every brake job is we're going to get in there while the car is still on the lift, and we're going to pump the brakes. Why are we going to pump the brakes? Because we need to take up whatever space there is in the caliper so the piston comes closer, brings the pads closer to the rotor. And we got to make sure that we've got brakes before we stick the thing in gear, because students get all excited. They're like, hooray, I just got my brakes done. Now I'm going to stick it in reverse and step on it. Well, you find out you don't have any brakes because the pedal goes to the floor. That's no good. Well, on drum brakes, what we're going to do is we're going to use the self-adjuster to get the brake shoes snug on the drum. What does snug mean? Close? Because when you put in new brake shoes, you're going to close off that self-adjuster so it's as short as possible. Well, the thing is, if you were then to step on the brakes, you'd find the pedal pretty much goes to the floor. And that's dangerous and horrifying. Especially because what you're going to do is you're going to start panicking, and all you're going to do is step harder on the pedal, which isn't going to do anything at all. So when we replace the brake shoes, what we're going to do is we're going to move the self-adjuster out, put the drum back on, see if it's snug. Move the self-adjuster out, which is to say lengthen it. Put the drum back on, see if it's snug. Move the self-adjuster out, put the drum back on until it gets snug. In fact, many people will move the self-adjuster out until the drum doesn't fit and then screw it back in a little. But we're going to get it snug. Then we're going to put the drum on, put the wheel on, and as we are backing out of the stall, after we've already checked to make sure that we do have brakes and, you know, the pedal's not going way down to the floor, what we're going to do is we're going to put it in reverse, and we're going to step on the brakes like this over and over again, because that's going to cause the self-adjuster to do the final adjustment on the brakes, because we don't want the customer doing that. We don't want this to be a surprise to some innocent civilian, because we know the right way to do it. So we're going to do it the right way. So after every brake job, I'm just going to put the thing in reverse and, you know, run it up to like 5 miles an hour and just hit the brakes like this. And that's going to adjust the self-adjuster right out to where it's supposed to be. Assuming that when you did this brake job, you checked that self-adjuster to make sure it was turning freely. Did you? Did you make sure it was clean and lubricated? Because what most people do is they leave it alone, one, or they don't clean it So as a result, it's really gritty and it doesn't turn freely. That thing's supposed to turn freely. So it's supposed to be cleaned and lubricated, or they might clean it without lubricating it, which just means it gets rusty and then locks up. So the cleaning and lubricating part of this job is the part that gets done the least. And as a result, a lot of times the mechanics are either prolonging problems or they are creating problems, because some people just spray everything down with brake cleaner, and you know that does a good job of cleaning stuff up, but it also removes a bunch of lubrication. Okay, when we are taking apart brakes, I don't care what your hands look like, but when you put together brakes, your hands need to be spotless, like you're doing surgery on the queen. Why? Because the least little bit of dirt or oil is going to get onto the friction materials. It is, and the friction materials are really absorbent. Now, technically, you should be able to hit that with brake cleaning spray, of which we got tons, so don't be shy. You should be able to hit that with brake cleaning spray and get it off, but why tempt fate, right? It's like, you know, eating spaghetti in white clothes. You're asking for it. So I don't care what your hands look like when you take it apart, but when you put it back together, you got to wash your hands first. And here's the thing, after you're done with a brake job, I don't care how good a job you did with your clean hands, we need to come in here with brake cleaning spray and wash everything down. Wipe it down with paper towels, not rags. Why? Because most of the rags in the shop already have oil on them to begin with, for one thing. And you don't want to be spreading that around. You know, rags are absorbent. We want to use paper towels so that when we're done with them, we throw them away. So use brake cleaner. It ain't free, but it's cheap. If you're going to do a brake job, bring me some brake cleaner so I don't have to use all my own, right? But a lot of people, they like, oh man, brake cleaner's cheap. So they're going to spray everything down, you know, 16 times before they take it apart. And then they're going to spray everything down 16 times after they put it together. So they end up using 3 cans of brake cleaner. Well, that's not what it's there for. Brake cleaner is a special kind of cleaner that doesn't leave an oily residue. Dries quick. It's a good cleaner for a lot of stuff. So it's good to have. So anyways, if I'm using brake cleaner, then I'm going to have a trash can with a liner underneath the wheel I'm spraying, right? To make sure nothing gets on my bitchin' brand new floor. Anything that doesn't get on the floor doesn't have to be cleaned up off the floor, which is the guiding principle. So whenever you're using brake cleaner, or really anything like that, or when you're bleeding brakes, you want to make sure that you've got a trash can, a big trash can with a liner underneath, so that it can catch all that stuff, because we don't want to be forced in a situation where the floor gets dirty really quick, or a situation where we have to wipe everything off, anything off the floor that doesn't absolutely, that we can avoid getting there. Yeah, because we want the floor to last a long time. We want the facilities to be well maintained, maintain a professional appearance. Yeah. So how do you lubricate this stuff? Well, there's YouTube videos on that. You know, I could spend 3 hours just telling you about how to lubricate and clean, you know, brake parts, but we don't have 3 hours for that. You know, we've got 20 class sessions times 3 hours. We only got 60 hours. So we got to kind of run through a bunch of stuff that I would much prefer taking my time with. Here's what you should do. You want to get really good at brakes? Go to Citrus College and take a brake class. Take the MLR brake class, which is a class they teach at night. Here I am sending you off to my competitors, but I can't, there's a bunch of stuff. I have to cover the whole car in 60 hours. They're going to cover one system of the car in 120. Can you see how you're going to get a much better and more thorough training in that? Like, I would love to spend an hour with you just on electronic parking brakes, but time just won't permit it. That's what I would do. It's the maintenance and light repair program. Technically the same program we're putting on, except it's going to be 2 nights a week, and it's going to be only offered at night. It's going to cost you more, not significantly more, but if you, I mean, this is too complicated of a mechanism to be able to explain in you know, do we have, you know, 30 hours to talk about brakes? We really don't. I mean, 120 would do it justice. So, like I said, right now we're borrowing time from, it looks like next semester, because we're supposed to have classroom instruction time and we're supposed to have shop time. Well, right now we're cramming all the classroom instruction time into one semester, theoretically. It's not going to work out that way exactly, but theoretically, so that we can have the shop time when the shop opens up, which freaking better be next semester, better be November. But let me show you something about European imports. Now, we talked about parking brakes, and we talked about emergency brakes, and we talked about how they're usually cable operated in normal cars. Well, what they started doing now with newer cars is they use these things called electronic parking brakes. And electronic parking brakes have a couple of advantages, such as automatic braking, and also such as hill control. For instance, if you've ever driven a manual transmission car, when you're going uphill and you're at a stop sign or a stop light, you got to be pretty skilled in order to get that car to start up a hill without backing into the car behind you. So it's got what's called hill control or slope control, which means you can press a button and it's going to apply your rear brakes, you know where the parking brake is? It's going to apply your rear brakes until you start moving forward. Well, don't stall it at that point, but until you start moving forward, and that way you won't be rolling into the car behind you, which is extraordinarily common, which is my way of saying, folks, if you're ever driving behind someone on a hill, keep a long distance between you and their car, because they may not be that good at driving a manual transmission, which means they're going to roll back, and you need to make sure they don't hit your car, because after all, I heard at Auto Club, 50% of the drivers on the road in the state of California have no insurance. Yeah. Plus, that's probably 75% of the drivers around here. Just a little player's tip for you. All right, so let's go to that. Of course, I don't have any of this stuff. Really? Oh, there it goes. See, you thought I didn't, but I did. All right, so let's go. This is what you should see. It's called Electric Parking Brake Components, Working Principles and Types. That's a good video for you. And, well, there, brake bleeding with a mighty vacuum pump. That's a good one. And let's see. So this one, let me show you something. This is what you need right here. You need a caliper. Where is it? Let me find it for you. Oh yes, here it comes. That's what you need, Chuck. That's what you need. You need a caliper with an electric motor in it. Yeah, you don't. Now, I'm sure that caliper's got to be at least 60 bucks. Now, okay, so this is an exciting feature, right? You can see it's got an electric motor in it, it's got a transmission in it, and that's going to control the caliper for the piston. Well, that's got to be an insanely expensive caliper. There you go. See, me and Chuck will both be the first ones to tell you that it's a really good idea to put electronics in one of the hottest parts of the car, because heat and electronics just get along perfect. Here you have electronic control board, and you got the electric motor, and you've got transmission. This isn't as bad as the one that's got the CVT, but that's what you're dealing with. The name of this video is Electric Parking Brake Components, Working Principles and Types. So when you watch this video, what you can do, if you can't get this name right now, when you watch the video, you can just grab it and then open up a new tab and watch the video, because this video is kind of long and it's kind of complicated and we don't have time to really do it justice. Anyways, as you can imagine, a caliper filled with electric motors and electronic controls It's got to be a bargain. Now it gives you features, but folks, you need to realize features is definitely something you pay for. Oh, is that it? There we go. This is what Chuck needs in his vehicles. Look, it's got the electric motor right here. It's got the load sensing CVT. So this is the exact same thing you've got in the Nissan transmission. It's got the cones and the belt, and it's got a planetary in it, which is good luck too. So I'll bet you this caliper is probably available right down at the corner of O'Reilly's for 20 bucks, probably. Don't think so. That looks like a dealer item to me. Good luck. Now, this stuff has been out for 20 years. That's true. So we should be seeing remanufacturers coming into it, but you look how complicated that caliper is. Look, you may like how European imports look on the outside. You may like their reputation, but the simple fact of the matter is the cost of ownership is through the roof. The reason that BMW gives you 2 years of free maintenance is because if you saw how expensive maintenance was, their JD Powers would be through the floor. If you saw how expensive maintenance is on that kind of car, their JD Powers ratings would be through the floor. People would say, you know what? I had no idea this car was this expensive to maintain and repair. Yep. Now, same thing is true with 5 years. If that's true after 2 years, imagine what it's like after 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, right? You may like the way they look and all this other stuff, but the simple fact of the matter is if we have to import parts from Germany, somebody's got to pay for that boat, right? Somebody's got to pay for the captain's uniform. I wish that was it, but yeah. So watch that video at your leisure. It's called Electric Parking Brake Components, Working Principles and Types. And there was also another one called,
Hey everybody, I'm here today.
This guy's enthusiastic. How to use an electronic parking brake driving lesson. Yeah, how to use an electronic parking brake driving lesson by Helpful DIY. Okay, so that's some stuff for you on electronic parking brakes. And I believe at that point, we're probably pretty close to done on brakes, unless you have some questions, comments, or thoughts on that. We talked about different types of fluids. I'll show you, because it's the only way, I'll show you how to put disc brake quiet on the pads and how to properly lubricate the shoes so that you get appropriate performance.
All right. Something, Mr. Roquette?
Yes, sir.
There also is a wear limit on the drums stamped on it.
Absolutely. And there's also a cut limit on the rotors stamped on it. Right, which is why, you know, many people don't do that and kind of work anymore, because what's happening is the manufacturers, in order to sell more parts, they've started making the cut limit very, very close to what it is new. In fact, like the old, what was it, the GM rotors, that you could only cut them once. So many places just, you know, replace the rotors because it's cheaper than cutting it and finding out you got to cut it again and it'll put it under the limit. So yes, that's true. On every drum and every rotor, you're going to see a limit to how far you can cut it. Because as you cut the drum using a brake lathe to true up the surface, the inside of the drum is going to get bigger. Well, there's a limit to how far you can go on that before it starts to overheat, crack, cause structural problems. Also, on a rotor, there's a limit to how thin you can make it before it starts causing problems too. And if on the two rotors you have one that's thinner than the other one, then you have to cut the thick one down to the size of the thin one, which means, you know, theoretically you could spend many minutes, put it that way, many minutes cutting down these rotors to the same size. And if you don't cut them down to the same size, it can cause a pull, or it can cause, well, yeah, it can cause a pull, which would be a problem. What's a pull? A pull is when the car doesn't go straight and you wish it did. Now, there's a pull that happens as you drive down the road, and there's a pull that happens when you use the brakes. two different things, regular pull and pull when braking. Pull when braking is usually signified by a brake problem, but it can also be signified by a suspension problem. The good thing for you is let's get it up on the lift and we can tell you which problem you have, so that you just don't get freaking reamed by someone who either doesn't know what they're doing or does know what they're doing, but they're going to charge you, full tilt for all these parts. For instance, if you lost a control arm bushing, stepping on the brakes could kick everything back in relationship to the vehicle. So, yeah. I'm having a hard time actually this year, Chuck, because what I'm starting to do is appreciate how much content we have to cover. And I'm having a hard time really choosing, which of all these things do the students need to learn? I mean, what can they learn through the books, and what do they need explained, and what do they need to know that's not in the books? Did you guys check out the task list?
Yeah.
Did you check to see what kind of progress you made, or how far you are so far?
Yeah.
Or which one of those operations you need to do on your car anyway? So it's like, oh yeah, good. I'm going to get class credit and save money. Folks, if I don't save you $1,000, should I say this semester? If I don't save you $1,000 this year, you're not working hard enough. You're not trying hard enough, right? Because Mr. Burks, I expect to see every car under your command between now and June. I'm serious about this, right?
You probably will.
I hope so. I hope so. And see, this is what we can do with this class is we can make a middle class person kind of live like a wealthy person or a poor person. We can basically kick up your style of living. So of course you would immediately go out and buy a European import because you're so happy with your newfound. No, please don't. All right, so let's go back to this share. What are we covering next?
Electric.
Oh, yeah, but you know what? I was looking at the videos from last semester.
Yeah.
And we went pretty far into electric and then stopped. So I would have to teach all that basic electrical again. And yeah, I don't know what to do about that because, this COVID thing really knocked us out, knocked us off our game. Yeah. But yeah, because if you look at the Zoom sessions from last semester, we got all the way to ignition systems, which is pretty far.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I feel you though, because that's what I would like to do is I would like to start off from there. But if we start off from there, we're going to lose every new student, which is the majority.
Not if the new students watch it on their own.
That's a thought. That's a good idea. Well,
it's only like 2 classes, right?
Really? That's got to be
3.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be 3. Yeah. Well, if you can inspire them, I mean, I'm a public servant.
I'll make cupcakes.
So worth it. Oh my God. Let's start talking about engines because that's probably what most people are going to have problems with. Most people are going to want to understand is engines. Okay, so engines, and I guess we got to say motors because old Gavin. He's Nancy Pelosi's like.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's a coincidence. Coincidence. Yeah, he's bankrolled by the Gettys. Why am I talking like this? He signs my paychecks, and that's a good thing. The point I was trying to make was, okay, so what are we trying to do? We're trying to create rotational force. Why? Because we're trying to turn the wheels. Yeah. So with the engines and the motors, those are considered power plants. And what we're doing is we are creating rotational force, which is to say torque. right? Torque, you could say is rotational force. Typically in this class, I tend to say it's twisting force. And that's what we're doing with engines and motors. Now, engines tend to be thought of as internal combustion engines and steam engines. Motors, we usually tend to talk about in terms of electric stuff, but that's imprecise. I mean, get on your bad motorcycle, right? Doesn't mean it's electrical. Well, here we go. This is just to make Gabe happy, so he feels like he never left work. You know, because I was telling the students today, you know, it's kind of groovy to have a job where you can wake up like 10 minutes before work and you don't have to wear pants, and you know, you can sit around and play with your dogs. You know, you don't have to walk too far to get to the refrigerator. But, you know, and you don't have to wear a mask. But, you know, talking into a camera, I haven't seen a live student in 6 months. That right there is, I'm assuming you guys are real, not a computer simulation. What if you are the electude of, anyway, that's electric motor. And what does an electric motor do? It rotates.
Yeah.
So we can put chains on it, we can put gears on it, we can put belts on it, so that we can turn the axle that gets the wheels spinning. That's pretty easy to see. Internal combustion engine is not that easy, not as easy to see. Because the problem with the internal combustion engine, except for the rotary engine, which is even harder to understand, the internal combustion engine is a reciprocating engine, which means the parts go back and forth. It's linear. And we have to change that linear reciprocating motion into rotary motion, which is what we do with the piston, the connecting rod, and the crankshaft. Just like when you're standing on a bicycle trying to pedal the pedals, your legs are going up and down like this, but the crankshaft is going like this, which makes the chain go like this, which makes the back wheel go like that, right? It's turning reciprocating motion, which means up and down, or back and forth, I should say, into rotary motion, which is this. Okay. So this is an electric motor. That's what you use in electric cars or hybrids. You know, hippie stuff. Quack. Primarily what we're going to use in motor vehicles is internal combustion engines. ICE, whatever. Internal combustion engines. And what does internal combustion mean? Well, internal means inside, combustion means fire. So internal combustion engines have the fire inside. Are there external combustion engines? Yeah, external combustion means that the fire is outside, like a steam engine. You know, the fire is outside and then the boiler gets hot. It's outside the engine. But internal combustion means that the fire is on the inside. So this could be gasoline. It could be diesel. It could be compressed natural gas, CNG. It could be propane and propane accessories. And it could be alcohol / E85, whatever. Some alcohol gasoline blend. It could be nitromethane in the case of top fuel dragster. Something like that. Some sort of fuel. Now you'll notice that these two are liquids. And these are gases. Oh, I'm sorry, doggone it. These are gases. That's a liquid again. Now, gases are assumed to give us A, more complete combustion because they have more oxygen around each fuel molecule. And they're, well, yeah, they give us more complete combustion. As a result, they're supposed to burn cleaner. And theoretically, they should give us more efficient combustion. The problem is the energy density. And this is the problem that my good friend Gavin probably isn't very clear on, is the whole concept of energy density. Energy density means how much energy can you pack into a certain volume. And the problem with batteries, at least modern batteries, is they just ain't making it. They just ain't making it, right? Like for instance, in a gas tank, I can probably pack, you know, hundreds of miles worth of transportation potential. Whereas in that volume of batteries, it wouldn't go as far. We don't have the energy density, which is to say, how much energy can you pack in a certain volume? As a result, we have to recharge electric cars a lot more often, right? Sad to say. And it takes a lot longer to recharge them. Okay, so liquids are understood to burn less efficiently because now we have to find some way of getting the oxygen around the fuel because after all, liquid gasoline won't burn. So we have to find some way of getting oxygen around this liquid gasoline so it'll burn. And it's assumed that a certain amount of this gasoline is not going to vaporize. As a result, it's not going to burn, and that's what's going to get passed through and turned into smog. It's going to get passed through the combustion process, I should say, and turned into smog. The problem with these gases is, you know, you can fill up the fuel tank on a diesel truck and drive for a day and a half. In terms of filling up a CNG or a propane tank, As a result, if you have a CNG, for instance, garbage truck or a transit bus, you got to be refilling it all the time. Now, the gases are also way more flammable too. Way more flammable because after all, they've got lots of space for oxygen around them and they are pretty much perfect for combustion as a result. That makes them way more risky, way more, you know, right? I mean, that's hazardous locations in the NEC. Any place you've got, you know, vapors, combustible vapors, flammable vapors. I can't remember. It's been a while since I taught it, but it's hazardous locations, right? Like if you have sawdust, for instance. Sawdust is a lot more flammable than lumber, right? Because it's got much more space for oxygen. Because after all, combustion is an oxidation reaction. Let's make sure we understand, because this will help this conversation. They have this thing at the Fire Academy where they call it the fire triangle. And the fire triangle consists of three elements. That's fuel, that's oxygen, which is found in the air, and that's heat or spark. Now, if you have any of these three elements missing, you can't have a fire. If you got those three elements together, chances you're going to have a fire. So, the fuel is delivered into the engine by the fuel system. The oxygen is delivered by the downstroke of the piston during the intake stroke. And the heat is delivered by the high compression of a diesel motor, or the spark is delivered by the ignition system of a gasoline, compressed natural gas, propane, or alcohol motor. Diesel is a compression ignition engine. It actually lights off the fuel because it doesn't have an ignition system. It actually lights off the fuel by getting the air so hot that as soon as the fuel hits it, it goes up. That's how a diesel motor works. Okay, so we're primarily going to study internal combustion engines. I mean, electric motors, you'd have to know a lot about, well, you'd have to know a significant amount about electrical to understand how electric motor works. Most people that do electrical don't understand how electric motors work because you have to understand electromagnetism. But then again, I don't have to understand how a dog's brain works to know how to teach it to sit, right? I mean, there's a practical limit to how much I really need to know. I mean, I don't have to be a PhD in dog psychology to get my dog to go outside when I want, or teach it not to chew up my shoes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you got to ask yourself, how much practical understanding of this do I need, right? We're not going to go into a big scientific diatribe about how the combustion process works, but we need to understand enough about the combustion process to where we understand when it doesn't work. Okay, so we're primarily going to talk about internal combustion engines. Now, the problem we're going to have is that internal combustion engines, it's hard to understand how the system works without understanding all the parts. And it's hard to learn all the parts without understanding how the system works. So what we need to do is we need to just be patient and take it slow, you know, and keep, you know, sampling from each world. Now, this is going to be found, maybe functional understanding will be found in your exciting auto upkeep book. And it's going to be in, well, the engine section of your book is going to go from chapter 10 to chapter 13. And yeah, so that's probably, well, and then you're also going to want to look at chapter 1 because that's going to start talking about it. But I'm not sure that it's going to be really, well, maybe not. Chapter 1's not going to do it. So chapter 10 through 13 is probably how you're going to want to look at it, but you're probably going to also want to look at YouTube videos because that's going to help you a lot in that regard. But let's just put it this way. We've got the fuel system delivering the fuel, which is primarily gasoline. And it's going to have to deliver the fuel not in a liquid form. It's going to have to deliver it in a form that's easily combustible, which is to say in a form that's small enough to where it's surrounded by enough oxygen to where it's going to be efficient and consistently able to burn. Because combustion is an oxidation process, as you can see, because it requires oxygen. Yeah. Now, where do we get the oxygen? The oxygen is in the air. What is it? 21%? 21% of air is oxygen. 79% nitrogen. Maybe 20%, whatever. 78% nitrogen. The rest is
78%, yeah, 78%, and 1% of all the rest.
How do you know?
Because I know. I don't know. Because I read stuff.
Oh, you read?
I went to school. I took geography classes. I don't know.
Yeah, I learned that geography class. Okay, so anyways, yeah, so the oxygen is going to come out of the air. How's the air going to get in the engine? Well, that's, you know, the piston's going to come down in the cylinder. What's a piston? Well, that's what we got to figure out. The piston's going to come down in the cylinder with the intake valve open. Remember, every valve does the same thing. It controls flow. Intake valve's open. Air, the piston's going to come down like this, and it's going to suck air into the system. At the same time, the fuel injector is going to fire, and it's going to shoot fuel and air into the cylinder on the intake stroke. Okay, so that's how air and fuel get in the engine. You say, well, I don't understand. Well, I mean, there's a lot of YouTube videos. If you'd like to learn more, I mean, I'm going to explain it over the course of, you know, tonight and, you know, probably, well, for the next couple of weeks. But if you'd like to see if you can get a head start, or if you'd like to see if, different ways of teaching it or seeing it help, back when I was your age, we didn't have animations. We had to learn this all the hard way, with chalk and slate. Papyrus and stone tablets. Okay, so combustion is an oxidation process, which means we have to mix the fuel and the oxygen, and then we have to get them to start a chemical reaction called combustion. All right, well, it takes heat or spark to make that happen. So that's what we got to do, and we got to have it happen inside the engine. And not only do we have to have it inside the engine, but we have to have it happen very rapidly, because if the engine's going 7,000 RPM, you don't have much time, or even 3,000 RPM, you don't have much time for the combustion process. So it has to be rapid, and it has to be efficient, because we can't be, look, burning wood is not an efficient form of heat. It's fun. I mean, it's easier to cut down a tree than sit there and shiver all night, but it's not particularly efficient. I mean, especially if you're burning it in the outside. Like say you're out there camping, that's an insanely inefficient use of firewood. But we don't care about efficiency. We care about s'mores. Feel me? Right? Because most of that heat is just going up. So one of the big advances in human civilization was the invention of a chimney. Because what it did was it pushed the heat out this way, plus it drew the air in, because without that air draw, you're going to find that your fire doesn't get that big. So, all these advances, I mean, you think of like the simplest stuff, and it made the biggest difference between, us sitting around, sitting in the dirt scratching fleas, and us sitting in the air conditioning talking a bunch of crap about people that aren't here, So combustion is an oxidation process. And what we need to do is we need to get the fuel and the oxygen to mix such that we can have efficient combustion, especially now, since we're worried about the emissions and we're worried about the fuel economy. We're striving more and more to become more and more efficient. In fact, we used to think of the efficiency of an internal combustion engine in terms of like 8 or 12%. Well, the new Toyotas, last time I went to Citrus, I found out the new Toyotas were busting out like 40% efficiency, which is insanely great. Now you say 40%, that's not that much, but that's 3 times higher than it used to be. And how do they do that? They do that by precise CNC engine design, CAD engine design, to where they got everything mapped out perfectly so that less heat is going into the cooling system. Less heat is going out the exhaust pipe, because you got to realize all the heat that goes into the cooling system is inefficiency. It's wasted heat, right? Because what we're doing with this air and fuel is we're creating heat. And we want the heat to push the piston down so it'll turn the crankshaft. Well, any heat that goes in the cooling system is wasted. In fact, it's a problem that we need to get rid of before it destroys the engine. And any heat that comes out of the exhaust pipe is wasted. In fact, it's a problem because after it caused all the forest fires in California, right? You notice all the forest fires ended at the US border? Global warming is very particular these days. The point I was trying to make was that we got to look and see where all this heat goes, right? Because that's what we're creating with this fire, is we're creating heat. All right, well, this graph keeps changing all the time. So let's see if somebody on the internet wants to take the responsibility for assigning percentages. Heat automotive. Let's see if we can get the image. I'm looking for a pie chart. Anybody see a pie chart? Anybody see any pie, actually? Well, yeah. Of course, yeah. that it? Ah. Well, it's not a pie chart, but I guess it's the next best thing. Okay, so what this is saying, can you see that? Control plus plus. Oh, what the hell happened? Anyway, I was happy there for a while. Control plus, yeah? Why is this? Oh, okay, so it's just going out. Okay, now there you see. Okay, so this is, you'll notice that this number and this number are not matching. See? This says 6% friction, that says 5% friction. This says 49% coolant, this says 30% coolant. That's why I didn't want to get involved. This says 18% exhaust, this says 40% exhaust. That's why I didn't want to get involved, because, you know, then everybody's going to say, well, I went on the internet and they said you were wrong. So let's just do it this way. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to take 30% and I'm going to say coolant. Let me go back. Sorry. So nobody agrees, which is perfect because that means I can't be proven wrong. I'm going to say 30% coolant. These are approximate. And we're going to call this, just because, I went to school, I'm going to call this heat utilization from automotive combustion. Yeah, what do you think about that? Pretty freaking fancy for a state school guy. Heat utilization from automotive combustion. Well, 30% of the heat is going to go into the coolant, where it's going to be a big problem. That's why if your cooling system doesn't work well, you need to get on that quick before it destroys your engine.
Yeah.
30% goes out the exhaust. And folks, you have to realize we're paying for all that heat. So what they're doing now is they're making the engines out of different materials. They're lining the cooling system with different materials that are going to transmit heat differently. Well, there's 30 and 30. We've probably got 10% aerodynamics. So as a result, they're trying to make the cars slipperier in the wind. You got probably 10% friction. What's the other 10%? Like chupacabras or something? Friction, internal engine friction, which is why, that's probably what it is. Internal engine friction, which is like why they went to roller cams. And it's also why they went to low tension piston rings. Bunch of terrible reasons. Roller lifters. Yeah, because they're trying to lower the amount of internal engine friction. And let's just say, just because I want to get past this, 10% external, well, driveline losses, that's what it is. Driveline, sorry. Losses. See, now I'm all paranoid because this is all going to be recorded. All my enemies will watch this and try to fact check me. Driveline losses, right? So that's lost in the transmission, trying to spin the clutch, for instance, trying to spin the flywheel or the torque converter, or getting the transmission hot. Look, all heat has to come from somewhere, right? Newton. Energy cannot be lost or gained. It can only change forms. What is that, Newton's second law of thermodynamics or something? Let's ask Vadim. He took a lot of geography classes. Anyway, if the transmission's hot, that energy had to come from somewhere, and it's coming from the motor. another comment on my teaching style. Anyway, the point I was trying to make was that when you touch the engine and it's hot, you paid for that heat. When you touch the radiator and it's hot, you paid for that heat. When you touch the exhaust pipe and it's hot, or the mufflers or the catalytic converter, you're paying for that heat. Look, if we had 100%, well, for instance, light bulbs. Remember the old incandescent light bulbs? How you would touch them and they get burned? Or remember back in the old days, Chuck remembers this, back when we used to have trouble lights made of incandescent bulbs, and it would like fall, and it would fall on your arm, and just like you'd hear all this sizzling sound. Yeah, the greatest day of my life is when I went to the store and I saw the fluorescent bulb trouble lights. I was like, oh my God, thank God. All right, because they're not as hot. Now, do you ever wonder why you never see an incandescent bulb in a school? It's because they take electrical energy. Well, let me show you. This little incandescent bulb, it looks like this, right? It's the old school light bulbs.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. It turns electricity into light, which is a form of energy. But what else? A ton of heat. In fact, it makes so much heat that you can put it in your easy bake oven and make cupcakes with it. Not Michelle Norman cupcakes, but you make, you know, like your little nephew, your little niece can make, or your nephew or your niece, of course, let me be clear, can make cupcakes with it, right? Because it puts out so much heat. Or you can put it in the casa de pollitos and all your little chicks can grow up. All your eggs can be incubated because it puts out so much heat. Well, look, folks, when I put a light in my light fixture, I want light out of it. I don't want heat, which is why we went to fluorescent tubes, because fluorescent tubes turn more of that electricity into light and less into heat. Okay, well, that's why now we went to LED bulbs. You know, because we can see, you know, the fluorescent equivalents, that was like, you were getting like 65, you were getting the equivalent of a 65 watt incandescent bulb for like 13 watts of power. That was cool. Well, now we got LED bulbs, which are even more efficient at turning electricity into light and not heat. Because I got to tell you, in terms of HVAC design, you have to compensate for all the heat that's being created by your lights, because that's going to actually require you to get a bigger air conditioner. So this is all interrelated in terms of energy efficiency for buildings. Well, let's see, do I have space? Sure. What is efficiency? Efficiency is inputs. No. See, I'm just getting paranoid. If I do 8 hours, if it takes me 8 hours to do 6 hours work, that's 75% efficiency. So that would be, help me, Chuck. Help me, Vadim. You got enough money to get a Tesla? Is it outputs over inputs or inputs over outputs? I'm getting stage fright right now, so.
Yeah.
Oh, it's outputs over inputs. Okay. So if I put in 8 hours at my job, but I only get 6 hours worth of work done, then my efficiency is 75%. There we go. My sister was a math major. Yeah. Hopefully she won't watch this video and start making a beef at the family reunion. The point I was trying to make was, if I work for 8 hours and I only get 4 hours work done, my efficiency is 50%. So efficiency is the question of, what are you getting for your investment? Now, look, every calorie, I should say, or every BTU of heat in my gasoline is going to turn into something.
Mhm.
But the question is it going to turn into the only thing that matters to me, which is the rotation of the tires?
Okay.
How much of the heat value, heat content, I guess you would say, in our fuel is going to turn the wheels? That's the big question, right? Because you know what I want to do? I want to have an engine one day that I can put my hand on the exhaust manifold and it's room temperature. That would be an efficient engine. And hopefully, as you know, material science gets better and better, we'll be better at that.
Yeah, Rockley, what do you think about hydrogen fuel cells and fuel cell cars?
Extraordinarily dangerous. Extraordinarily dangerous. Yeah, I mean, hydrogen gas is one of the most explosive gases there is, right? So, you know how cars are. It's the same thing with flying cars, right? I don't trust the idiots driving them, right? Because you get in a crash and you got a whole bunch of hydrogen gas. I mean, back in the day, you know, I used to be in the School of Engineering at Cal State LA. They were going to put a hydrogen fueling station on top of the hill. Well, the thing is, one spark and it would have blown the freaking university right off that hill. So, I mean, it's a good idea, and in a controlled environment, you know, it's like having a nuclear reactor on your car. In a controlled environment, it works fine, but knowing the idiots that I drive around, I mean, if they can find a way to do it, that's groovy. But I mean, it'd be nice if it was efficient, and they're finding ways to separate, you know, salt water into, you know, water and energy, which is cool, but not ready for prime time right now. I do know that last month, one nuclear power station, because I think there's only one left in California, produced more energy than all the wind and solar in the whole state of California for like 6 hours. And guess what? They want to shut it down.
You know, because France is running on nuclear energy.
What? Oh, yeah.
France. Almost all their energy is nuclear.
Right? And Germany went all wind and solar, and it's like there was a time there where no wind blew and it was overcast, and there's like, oh, look, please let us use your nuclear power. Oh, please. They should have said, no. However you say it in French. Yeah, they should have said, well, you remember World War II?
Yeah, I remember you coming to Paris.
Yeah, remember your march in Paris? Well,
there you go.
Yep. Yeah. Remember Verdun? Yeah. Anyways, my point was that how much of the heat content in their fuel is going into the wheels? You know, I want to have an internal combustion engine with no radiator. And what we're seeing, Gabe, is as we replace, well, okay, look, in electrical, we can see that if we use more efficient engines, we can use smaller conductors, right? Right? Because conductor size is based on current flow. More efficient motors are going to use less current flow. Yeah. Which is why, I mean, the whole thing about high efficiency motors and, you know, repowering all these factories and stuff like that. We can rewire with much smaller wires. I mean, just the savings in conductor costs is huge. Now, down in Antarctica, they are working on superconductors, which is to say a conductor that has zero resistance. You have any idea the revolution in electricity that would happen if there was zero resistance in conductors? Okay, well, right now we have superconductors at, you know, minus 60, minus 70. But if we could get room temperature superconductors, which is to say a conductor that had zero resistance at room temperature, electricity would be so cheap we wouldn't even meter it. And that would be a complete revolution. Okay, fine, let's have electric cars now. But let's not press the issue and make it so, really, because what they want to do is they want to make it so everyone has to ride the bus and the train. Well, how's that working out, Mr. Coronavirus? Right? So, who knows? All I know is you should have a lot of money because that's going to help, whether, you know, things are good or bad. It's going to help. So, but the sufficiency issue is the big question in modern automobiles, right? How are we going to propel the vehicle? And it's basically going to be a question of turning the wheels. Okay, well, how we're going to do that is torque. Now, what creates torque? What creates torque, since, well, 855, doggone it. I got a cylinder here, I got a piston in the cylinder. Let's just kind of slop this thing together. And I'll stay after for a minute. Here's a connecting rod right here. And you can check all the stuff on YouTube just in case you don't believe me. And then I've got a crankshaft that goes like this. And then I'm going to finish off my connecting rod right there. Crankshaft. Connecting rod. Don't worry, we'll review this next time. That right there is a piston. And the piston's going to go down, and it's going to make this thing turn. Well, this thing right here is the combustion chamber, la cámara de combustible. And then what's going to happen is we're going to have a big old boom right here. We're going to have a big old boom right there, and all that pressure is going, all that temperature is going to heat up the nitrogen. The nitrogen is going to expand, and it's going to push the piston down this direction with great violence. Better change your oil. Now, why does a diesel motor have so much more torque than a gasoline motor? Because it's got twice as much compression. It's going to have twice as high a temperature. It's going to be much more efficient at getting the fuel to combust. That's why it gets better gas mileage. And it's going to be much higher pressure pushing the piston down, which is going to give us much greater torque, which is twisting force. That's what I wanted to communicate to you. That's why the new Dodge truck came out with 1,000 foot-pounds of torque in a pickup. That's cool. And, you know, pretty high gas mileage readings too. But that's what it's all about, folks. We got a piston in a cylinder, just like a, you know, just like a caliper has a piston in a cylinder, or just like a wheel cylinder has two pistons in a cylinder, or just like a master cylinder has pistons in a cylinder, except we're using the pressure to move the piston rather than using a piston to move the pressure. Wait, did I say that right? Mm-hmm. We're using pressure to move the piston rather than, yeah, that means. Okay, well, in the wheel cylinder, it's doing the same. Wheel cylinder in the caliper, it's using pressure to move the piston. In the master cylinder, I apologize. Obviously, it's getting late. 13 hours on this. So in the master cylinder, we use the piston to move the pressure. In the caliper and in the wheel cylinder, we're using pressure to move the piston. Yeah? Ya basta. Yeah? And since it's connected to you know, this piston can only go up and down in the connecting rod. I'm sorry, gee wizards. The piston can only go up and down in the cylinder. I'm sure glad I'm recording this. The piston can only go up and down in the cylinder. It only has reciprocating motion, which is to say back and forth. The connecting rod allows us to turn that back and forth motion into rotary motion, which is what we need to turn the wheels. Because the crankshaft bone is connected to the transmission bone, which is connected to the axle bone, which is connected to the wheel bone, yeah? Oh. The good thing is we'll be talking about engines next week, but do me a solid and prepare yourself as well as you can for that. There's a bunch of good videos on YouTube. Well, there's certainly a bunch of videos. And that will help a great deal, because this is one of those things where you're probably going to want to watch some animations. I'll show you a couple very short ones, but whatever you can do to prepare yourself for this conversation, I would greatly appreciate. As I said, it's chapter 10 through 13 in the new book. Whatever it is in the old book, just do the engine stuff and see how far you can get. What else? ¿Qué más?
Did a great job.
You're so nice. Appreciate it. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
guys.
Hope it
See you
works
next
for
week.
you. I'll see you next
Yeah,
week.
thanks.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. And I'll put this
Bye.
up on YouTube it takes a while to process, so it'll probably take 3 hours. So in case you just have to see it again before midnight.
So who's that
Good
Rowdy?
night.
Night. Good
See you next
stress.
week, guys. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Have a great week.